Chapter 62. 1 month and a day later. In all my years, I had never felt such anger as what was burning through me at this moment. The grass around me was blackened, the very life within them burned away by my rage. Below me, a puddle of blood, slowly dripping from my left arm, still clutched tightly in my right. I was down on one knee, sinking slightly into the mud as my blood mixed with the dirt below. Even as I stared at the ruined landscape around me, another wave of barely controlled rage washed over me. I was more than enraged. I was beyond livid. The rage that filled me was the rage of the betrayed. Around me, the rain began to fall. Klldarkness, 1 day prior. Sitting atop one of the many spires, a young cyan child bathed in blue fire sits. High above, a roiling mass of energy that threatens to consume all. Dotting the spires all around the child are denizens of Klldarkness, each nearly shaking with the strain of holding the power at bay, while a thin tendril of energy snakes down to join the glowing aura blue fire. His eyes open, burning with white light as the energy slowly pours into his soul. His journey was nearing its end, control nearly at his fingertips. "Another 5%! One of the Klldarkness calls as the flow of energy increases. The blue aura is filled with a golden green, little motes of electricity pouring off of the child like a waterfall, the air filled with the scent of ozone. "It's unbelievable," Sober whispers, watching from outside of the circle. The small Klldarkness beside him nods in agreement. How much of the energy has been returned to him? After this part, 75%. The problem is that as his control grows, so does the energy. It seems every bit he gains is nearly twice what he had before. Sober says, "But we believe that this will be enough." Sober stares up at the cyan before looking away. "It'll have to be," he says. "We're running out of time." The area of space, formerly known as Namek. The next day. A sliver of light forms, spreading wide before a small figure appears. It looks around, confusion painting its face, even as its whole body seems to shake. With a scream, a wave of power seems to emanate from the creature, expanding out into the cosmos. With a loud pop, it was gone. Klldarkness! The difference was astounding. Before, my energy had been at war with itself, one side a placid lake, the other a torrent of burning fire. Now, however, I could not feel a difference between the two. My normal energy was not quite as calm as it once was, but was more a flowing river than a waterfall or a rapid. The energy that made up my legendary Super Saiyan side, no longer a wildfire, burning brighter than the sun. Now it felt like little more than a cozy fire, still deadly if misused, but no longer in danger of consuming all within its path. It was controlled, I whispered, opening my eyes, taking in the little sparks that filled the air around me. Around me were 12 of the Klldarkness, each panting, sweat-covered, clearly exhausted from the previous effort. I lifted myself gently, balancing on the tip of the spire, as one of the Klldarkness lands on the spire beside me. "Khalil," he asks, "how do you feel?" I breathe deeply, concentrating on the energy within me. "I feel good. I feel way better than before." My character sheet was becoming significantly more interesting. I no longer had a specific spot for the legendary Super Saiyan transformation, just the false Super Saiyan, which was stronger than ever before. I could only imagine that I had simply absorbed that side of me. The rest was all grayed out, but didn't seem to be much of an issue overall. The most interesting part was a new section for spirit control. Every percentage had added 1 point to my EM, so at Mastery, I had added 100 points in total. My power level had skyrocketed. Not only that, but I had also gotten experience, hidden quest success, Master Spirit Control, 6,000 XP, 47,000, 45,000, for level 7, Level Up Alert. A few quick buttons and I had leveled up for the first time in years. I was many times stronger than I had been as a child last time, but significantly lower level at this point. I should take the time to visit the Chamber of Space and Time, do some of the battles, I think, considering the fastest way to more experience. That and kill Frieza and Cooler. Sober nods before looking off into the distance. "You should take a few days to rest, Cull." Then we can continue your training, now that you have control. You completed this part much faster than I think anyone could have expected. That's a good idea. I should probably take a short trip, see exactly what my limits are like now, I reply. I feel good, but there is no telling if that will remain the same once I tap into that power. Probably a good idea, Kli, Soba replies. Perhaps you could return in 3 to 4 days. That shouldn't be I start to say before pausing. Kli? Soba asks, watching me closely. I turn away from him, looking far, far to the south. Something tickles at the edge of my senses, something almost recognizable, but I can't quite place it. There is something out there, far away. I almost recognize the energy, I say, trying to concentrate on it. Beside me, Soba closes his eyes as he too reaches his senses out. A Namekian. What did you say? I ask, turning towards him, my eyes snapping open. It's a Namekian. I have felt their energy before, as their planet was not too far from here, Soba explains. This one is abnormally strong for their race. I double my concentration, reaching far, far into space, trying to eke out the tiniest sliver of information. There should be no Namekian strong enough that their energy reaches this far, Soba, I explain, feeling out the energy. As you say, Klis, yet the energy was unmistakably Namekian in nature, Soba responds. Piccolo, I think, considering the option. The Goku from another universe appeared here, why not someone else? Well, whoever it was, they disappeared really quickly. Nothing remains at Namek, I say, shaking my head. No, they simply moved, Klal. We really must work on your energy sensing, Soba explains, pointing more east. I zero in on where he is pointing and immediately feel it. A massive energy, dwarfing my own by magnitudes I can't even consider. I gasp, nearly falling to my knees, but force myself to remain standing. Kal, what is it? Soba asks, grabbing my shoulder to steady me. I know that location, I say, raising 2 fingers to my forehead, concentrating hard. That's Earth. Kal, no! Soba yells, but I was already long gone. Earth, Kami's lookout. I appeared with a pop on a scene of madness. Mr. Popo's lifeless body was in multiple pieces, Kami missing both legs, unconscious. Next to his body, a rice cooker, the top melted off, a tall old Namekian kneeling down, his hand on the chest of Kami. There is a glow, and Kami is gone, absorbed into the Namekian. The sky is pitch black, Shenron circling the lookout, even as another explosion of light erupts from within, the building exploding as a dragon as red as the sunset erupts out. His momentous form fills the sky, his head as large as the entire lookout. Everything is happening so fast that I can barely keep my eyes on one thing, let alone everything happening at once. I could do little but watch in horror as Ultimate Shenron turns, his mouth opening wider than the entire lookout, and devours Shenron in a single bite. Tendrils of energy flood out as an electrical storm coats Ultimate Shenron, his red form shimmering, slowly shifting into gold. Saisei, I whisper, staring up at the golden form of the dragon. I turn, my eyes catching those of Piccolo, who too is staring up at the massive dragon. Shenron, I wish to be returned to my youth, to my power, Piccolo yells, a malicious smile spreading across his face. A ball of energy forms in my palm, poised to erase the Namekian from the face of the earth, but I pause. If he dies, he takes the only set of Dragon Balls with him, a set that I would need to right the wrongs. The lookout is bathed in gold as the dragon's eyes light up. The sky rumbles as it grants his wish, his age fading away before my eyes. His power level is low, not even a worry at this point, but needing to keep him alive would make this difficult. What is your second wish? Seisei rumbles. My mind freezes, struggling to instantly form the wish I would need to at least stop the madness in place. Say, I wish that Namek and its people go back to how they were before I ever went there, I yell, my voice filling the sky. Silence fills the air before Shenron at last responds. Your wish cannot be granted. What? But, I say out loud, confused beyond measure. There is an explosion of light from a barely visible black spot that I could only now see as it was lit with the light of its energy, as a beam of intense heat washes away Saisei. as I realize it was not my wish that could not be granted. "No!" I yell, as the wish-granting dragon is destroyed before my very eyes. The blast contained so much energy that the world shakes, the air around the lookout whipping around like a tornado as it's superheated. The dark speck gets closer, and as it does, its power continues to grow, before the small Namekian lands next to Piccolo. As its hand touches his shoulder, Piccolo is gone in a flash of light, and somehow, someway, the power contained in the small Namekian increases again. "Logan," I ask, staring into the glowing eyes of evil. "Time Nest." "Trunks!" Cronoa yells, startling the boy out of his stupor. "Cronoa, what's wrong?" he asks, jumping to his feet. "Something is going on with one of the scrolls," she says, pointing to one that still remained on the shelf. As they watched, its edges crinkled, as though it burned with an invisible flame. Earth. The Namekian studies me for a moment, before realization flashes over his face. "Kul, how interesting." I flinch hearing his voice, a cacophony of voices seemingly layered behind his own, giving it a demonic timbre that was the exact opposite a voice of a child should be. "What's going on here?" I ask, taking a slight step back. "How are you here?" He starts to answer, before cocking his head to the side, as though listening to something that wasn't there. "Logan?" I ask again, fear filling me. I could feel his energy so much better than ever before, after my time with the yard rats. I could feel the layers, the thousands of different beings that now made up the small Namekian. So many more Namekians than existed in any timeline. "What have you done?" I whisper, filled with the horror of it all. At this, his eyes snap back to my own. "What have I done?" He seems to shake, almost silent laughter before he shakes his head. "I've become something more, Klychi, so much more. The voices are so many it's only static. Background noise." As he makes to continue, a sliver of light appears beside him, breaking open into a colored void of code. I recognize some of it before my vision is blocked by a frost demon stepping out of the void and onto the surface of the lookout. As soon as his feet are down, the sliver of light disappears. "Logan, we need to leave now. The time patrollers are coming," the frost demon says, grabbing the small Namekian's shoulder. Logan continues to stare at me before replying, "Why would I fear the patrollers, Chris? They no longer challenge me. Not anymore." The frost demon, ice to my eyes but named Chris, turns Logan towards him. "I know you're strong, buddy, I can feel it, but there are 5 more sets of Namekians, and we need everyone you can get." What? I exclaim, unable to contain the outburst. "You're the one causing all these issues?" Chris freezes before turning his head slowly to face me, a look of pure confusion on his face. As he continues to stare at me, he actually frowns, before seemingly typing into the air. "Logan, do you know this guy?" Chris asks, sliding his finger down an invisible list. "This is Kal, Chris. He's a gamer. Billy, I think," Logan replies, at last tearing his eyes away from my own. With a swipe of his hand, he turns back to me, studying me much more intensely. "Interesting, very, very interesting." I flood my body with energy, pouring it all into my hands, as my energy turns into an inferno within me. My aura sparks to life, the golden sheen of the false Super Saiyan sparking around me. As a false Super Saiyan, my power level was only 221 meters, but it would be enough to stall for the moment. With a roar, I release it, hoping it would distract them enough for me to escape. A figure appears at my side, his short leg slamming down on my arms, my left shattering under the force, as my beam is directed downward, into the lookout, and further down, into the earth below. A hand grips into my hair, yanking me backward, as the spot I had just been in is erased by a silver blur of energy. I land hard on the surface of the lookout, as a blast of energy slams into the figure standing in front of me, the light so bright they are a shadow of pitch black to my eyes. The energy of the blast explodes, the lookout around us crumbling, sending us all falling through the air. I right myself, slowing my fall, as I touch down on the ground far below. Before me, a short-statured man with blazing white hair. "V Vegeta?" I ask, pulling myself to my feet. He doesn't even turn, his eyes still locked on the forms of Chris and Logan, who drops slowly to the ground in front of us. "Get out of here, kid," he says, hyper-focused on the two enemies. "The Namekian has absorbed multiple timelines worth of Namekians," I say, trying my best to help. "I know," Vegeta says. "I can sense their anguish." "Ah, Vegeta, so you've joined us at last." "I wasn't sure if it would be Goku or the kid again," Chris says, motioning towards Vegeta slightly. "Are you sure you want to be here right now?" "For crimes against time and the atrocities you have committed, you two have been sentenced to destruction, body, mind, and soul," Vegeta says, cutting him off. His hand, resting lightly at his side, lights up with a dark purple energy, little motes of silver floating in it. In a fluid motion, so quick I couldn't follow, his hand was pointed at the two of them. "Hakai!" A blast of darkness emits from his hand, slamming into the open hands of Logan, now standing in front of the Frost Demon. Where I had expected the darkness to simply eat him away, instead he holds it in place, a grimace on his face even as he pushes it back, before launching it into the air. The Frost Demon appears in Vegeta's face, a quick combo dodged like they were fighting in slow motion. Vegeta's fist slams into the Frost Demon's stomach, knocking him back, and with a rotation of his hips lifts and brings his leg down, kicking the creature across the face. Unreal, I think, watching the way Vegeta moves so smoothly. Vegeta ducks backward, the leg of the Frost Demon slicing through the air where he was just milliseconds before. As he drops, he catches the foot above him, rotating, pulling the creature towards him. His legs come up, slamming into the Frost Demon's stomach, tossing him into the air, even as he rotates so a thin beam of energy from Logan just barely slips by. Thankfully I was being careful, as the beam of light nearly hits me as well, just barely dodging as I launch myself into the air. Their power levels were in the multiple trillions area, which was significantly higher than what I had. Considering how powerful I was at the end of the last game, I could see how this was possible. Vegeta's power level was a mystery to me, his energy a void that sang to my very soul, yet he seemed to be holding his own against two equally powerful opponents. Every attack blocked sent shockwaves that shook the planet beneath our feet, and I could sense people dying by the millions all over the planet in response. Death had come to this world, and they would suffer for it. There was an explosion, as the Frost Demon's power multiplied as his form shifted into a luminescent blue. His aura growing so bright as to blot out the sun, he appeared just inches from Vegeta, whose life was only saved at the cost of the top 2 inches of his hair. Logan appeared then too, his hands full of fire as he attempted to kill the one-armed man. Where before I would have said Vegeta was more than a match for the two of them, I was now having to consider that the tides had turned. One perhaps would have been little issue, but both at the same time. There was a pop beside me, causing me to jump back slightly to defend myself, only to find Soba standing there. "Cull," he says, nearly losing his feet as the ground shook. "I told you not to leave." "I didn't have a choice," I replied, motioning towards the battle. "I was too late regardless. They are both so strong, I don't think Vegeta can handle them both." Soba's eyes track the battle much better than my own do, his energy sensing on a completely different level than my own. "Klldarkness, the Namekian, he's made up of thousands of them. How?" "I never sensed more than 100, Soba asks, his eyes wide. "He's traveled across multiple timelines, multiple universes, to absorb as many of them as he could," I reply. "It's made him unfathomably powerful. The air around us tightens, as though a pressure is filling the very air as Soba's aura appears around him." "Soba?" I ask, studying him. "There are many abilities you can gain through spirit control, one of which is uniquely suited for just such a circumstance," he says, glancing at me. "It seems almost fate that we would meet when such a fearsome creature would one day come to our universe." "What are you talking about?" I ask, bewildered. "I can split him, Klldarkness. I may be able to separate all of the beings he has absorbed with enough time." Soba answers, raising his hands. "I don't know how much it will weaken him, but surely enough for the Grand Priest to beat him. If not, you should be more than strong enough to kill him yourself." There is a crash, as Logan is thrown from the battle, slamming hard into the earth just 100 feet away. Time Nest. The 3 remaining people are gathered around the time scroll, watching Vegeta battle it out with the 2 monsters. "Cronoa put me in," Trunks says, one hand gripping his sword, the other laying on the scroll. "Absolutely not, Trunks," Chronoa says, slapping his hand away from the scroll. "Look at your father. He's barely keeping up with the two of them. You would distract him and get the two of you killed." "But I," Trunks says, before being cut off. No buts. Vegeta was clear that none of us were to interfere. Earth. There was almost a whine in the air, as Soba prepared to do whatever he planned to split Logan apart once more. On the count of 3, Soba warns, he will likely move to absorb them again, so you will have to be quick. I nod, silently counting as a feeling of other fills the air. There is a pulse of energy, almost like a gust of wind, that slams into Logan's small form as he rushes in to attack Vegeta once more. He freezes in place, and almost like a shower of gore, dozens of Namekians are strewn from his body, landing all over the ground like a spraying gout of blood. A horrified scream comes from Logan as another blast hits him, the field filled with more Namekians. His power level has dropped tremendously, but not nearly enough for me to quickly kill him. With a pop of energy, I was in his guard, his screams of anguish nearly ear-splitting, so close, but I still land the uppercut to end all uppercuts. His head is jerked back as another blast of energy connects, ripping more Namekians from his small body. As I move to attack again, a blast of freezing energy slams into me, knocking me away from Logan, who has fallen to his knees. I land hard, rolling, jumping to my feet as I pour energy into the palms of my hand, preparing to boil Logan alive if I have to. The world freezes, reminiscent of my use of potential unlocked, but it's not a new power manifesting, but my mind recoiling in horror. A second blast of energy is nearly upon me, this one enough to wipe out the entire planet on this side. The first was weak, only enough to get me away from Logan, but Chris's follow-up attack was meant to kill. I concentrate then, grabbing the nearest energy signature I could to try and avert this death, when I realize that the energy has already moved. Between the beats of my heart, Soba had appeared in front of me, his hands outstretched, filled with more energy than I ever thought he could contain. We both knew that he could not block such an attack, and so he did not try. Instead, he deflected most of it down, sideways, away from us. But as the energy tore into the planet, he too was engulfed, his body burning to cinders and ash just a dozen feet away from me. With a snap, time resumed its never-ending pace as the earth mantle cracked beneath us. My mind was screaming, another friend lost to the death game that this world had become, even as Gamer's mind raced to shut it off. Another friend gone, saving my worthless life. I thought as I felt something shift within me. A rage unlike any I had ever felt before poured through my veins like acid, burning, an inferno destroying everything in its path. Within me, my energy surged, higher than I had ever felt, in this life or the last. As even the air I breathed burned with the rage of destruction. My vision was red, hatred burning the ground around me into a slurry of molten rock as I ascended, truly, for the first time. Bing. True Legendary Super Saiyan unlocked. Bing. Due to previous life experience, the following forms are unlocked. True Legendary Super Saiyan 2. With a roar, my putrid green aura erupted around me, my body wreathed in flames, as my hair flashed between its stark black and the gold of the Super Saiyan. A blast of energy slammed into me but split, heading in 2 different directions. As my energy reaches a fever pitch, as though suddenly doused, my energy transforms into a placid lake, a well of energy burning deep within me. I had ascended, not into the legendary Super Saiyan form I had expected, nor the normal Super Saiyan form, but something completely different. My body had barely changed besides muscle definition, but my power level, even in the first form, had skyrocketed. At 15B, I was still not a threat to the Frost Demon, but Logan had dropped far enough that he could be killed. With a negligent shrug, I ascended further, my aura burning brighter more, the green tinged with golden sparks and flashes of lightning. 84B stared back at me, and for the first time since this battle had started, I was no longer the weakest man in the room. I was gone, no longer stood where I was, but now once more in Logan's face, my fist smashing into his jaw with such force that it was gone, ripped clean off of the screaming child, before the shockwave carried him with it, throwing him into the air, a trail of blood and gore hanging in the air to mark his passage. I move to follow, but my brain tells me now. The frost demon is still a threat, and could likely kill me in an instant. His plan, whatever that may be, hinged on Logan absorbing as many Namekians as he could. Sober at the cost of his life, had given me the opportunity to put that plan to rest with a wave of my hand. Forgive me, I thought as I made the choice that would set the tone for the rest of this life. With a wave of my hand, the Namekians torn from Logan's body are washed away in a flash of light, burned to the last cell into ash, removed now from existence, so that they would forever be out of their reach. I squashed the horror of what I did down, as far below my thoughts as I could, to ignore the loss of life that this day had cost. Ahead of me, Vegeta has turned the tide, tearing the frost demon apart in the one-on-one battle. My eyes snap to Logan, who even at 1,000 meters can be seen staring in horror at what I had just done. He fades away, his energy signature gone completely, as my eyes turn back to Vegeta and the frost demon. Chris has started using some sort of portal to dodge Vegeta's attacks, some of which still get through despite his creative use of the portals. I watch the battle, my power level growing the entire time, as my EM seems to still grow, while I used a legendary form. As it's my first time in the form, I can feel my control slipping, but I hold on for as long as possible. With a snap, it was gone, the sudden loss of energy sending me to my knees. My arm, shattered previously, continues to bleed. A pulse of energy drags my eyes back to the battle, as Vegeta's form appears before me, slapping a blast of energy away, saving my life once more. As the rain begins to fall around us, I feel the enormous energy signature that was Chris fade away just as Logan's did. I seethe, my body still racked with the rage that had caused my ascension. I can barely breathe through the anger and the pain before I slip into the bloody mud beneath me. As darkness takes me, I feel a gloved hand grab me by the front of my shirt.